Stop the panic. The Tennessee Titans are in a great spot heading into the second week of free agency. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. I saw a lot of panic from Titans fans this weekend. I think it's completely misplaced. I'll explain why. Also, we'll look at how much cap space the Tennessee Titans currently have, who are some remaining options on the free agent market, and I'll talk about ways the Titans can get better outside of this first few weeks of free agency. Before we get into that, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Throw a thumbs up on the video right now if you're watching on YouTube. Remember, the show is always free. All I ask for in return is the press of a button. Also want to let you guys know my Calvin Ridley film breakdown will be live on the Tic Tac Titans film channel at 8 a.m. Eastern time on Monday morning. Make sure that you guys go check that out. I'm going to have a link to that video down in the description below. It's going to be on the podcast, on YouTube. Make sure that you guys go check out my Calvin Ridley film breakdown again on the Tic Tac Titans channel here on YouTube. But there was panic over the weekend about the Tennessee Titans defense. The Titans aren't going out and getting a linebacker. They don't have anyone on the defensive line. We saw Jerome Baker, Eric Armstead, Oren Burks, DJ Reader, Devin White, all these guys go off the board. And it's not just fans. There were people who cover the team, people just literally losing their minds. What are we doing at linebacker? What are we doing at defensive line, guys? The Titans are in a great spot right now with what they've already done in free agency. There is no need to panic at all. Let's all collectively take a chill pill here. Number one, the Titans could never solve everything in one offseason. We talked about it before free agency started. We talked about it all last year. It's going to take more than one offseason to fix this thing. So the Titans go out and get Calvin Ridley. They go out and get Cushenberry. They go out and get Tony Pollard. They add Cheeto at cornerback. The Titans are making good additions, but they were never going to be able to solve wide receiver, offensive tackle, center, cornerback, safety, linebacker, D-line, edge. They weren't going to be able to solve everything in one off season. You look at the options that were on the board at linebacker. To me, the best player was Patrick Queen, and I thought he got overpaid by the Steelers, and I don't think that Patrick Queen is a difference maker anyway. He's a good linebacker, but he's not a stud. He's not somebody who's going to make the difference between a title and not a title. Same thing with Jerome Baker. People were losing their minds when Jerome Baker went to Seattle instead of signing with the Titans. I thought Jerome Baker was a great fit too, but is Jerome Baker the difference between the playoffs and not the playoffs? Is Jerome Baker the difference between the Titans being a title contender and not? No, he's not. So again, the Titans were not going to be able to solve every issue on this roster in one off season. So of course they're going to have holes at linebacker. They're going to have holes on the defensive line. They're going to have a hole at edge. Like, the Titans were never going to fill all of these holes this year. And I don't think the players that they're losing out on, the Jaguars gave 3 years, $50 million to Eric Armstead. I'm not paying that for a 30-year-old defensive lineman who's missed 13 games in the last 2 years. Tyron Smith went off the board. I'm not paying $20 million with $13 million in incentives like the Jets did. I'm not doing that for a 33-year-old offensive tackle who doesn't fit the timeline of the team and has missed 37 of 67 games in the last few years. Like, I'm not doing that. And that is not the difference between the Titans contending and not contending. And let me just say this. The Titans are not going to the Super Bowl this year. So they shouldn't be out there spending irresponsibly on guys, giving way overpays with multi-year contracts for veteran players when they're not going to the Super Bowl. The Titans should be competitive this year. They should win more games than they won last year. 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, maybe 10-7 at best. But the Titans aren't a Super Bowl contender. This is a multi-year plan. So I don't expect them to spend every single dollar of the $80 million in cap space this year. That was just never my expectation. So I feel like we all have solid expectations for the team, and then we get into free agency and we all lose our minds, okay? And more importantly than anything, the only thing that matters this year is figuring out if Will Levis is the answer. That is all that matters this year. Is Will Levis the guy that we need to continue to build around? Because they have cap space. They have draft picks in 2025 and 2026 that if Will isn't the answer, then they can pivot and go look for one. But finding out if Will Levis is the man for the job is all that matters for the Titans this year. They are not a Super Bowl contender. They need to be competitive. They need to start getting some winning habits, building a good winning culture. I get all of that, but be realistic here. Losing out on Jerome Baker or Eric Armstead is not the end of the world. It's not do or die for the Titans in that way. Have realistic expectations of where this team is at. And let me just say this. Screw the defense. D-line, linebacker, nose tackle, cornerback, safety. You know what's more important than any of those? Offensive tackle. Because offense, if the Titans can solve the offense in a majority, that's why I still say, draft two linebacker or draft two offensive tackles, draft two wide receivers still, and fix the offense completely this year. Get a good look and a good evaluation of Will Levis, and then attack the defense next year when you have a ton of draft capital, when you have a ton of cap space again. Okay? You can't fix everything at once. So for me, the only thing that I'm stressed out about at all is offensive tackle. And when you look at offensive tackle, there's still Trent Brown, Mekhi Becton, Josh Jones they could take a look at. George Fant is just a average, maybe a little below average starting offensive tackle. Charles Leno, Cam Fleming, Donovan Smith. Heck, Josh Nijman had good games and good moments for the Green Bay Packers. So to me, add one of these veteran tackles who can start at right tackle or left tackle right away. Add two offensive tackles in the draft. One who can start, Joe Alt, I'm looking at you, and then one you can develop with a mid-round pick. And that's what matters to me, an offense that is a professional NFL offense so that you can properly evaluate Will Levis. If the Titans go 8-9 and they lose all of their games that they lose, 36-35, I'll be incredibly happy. But at the end of the day, my point here is stop with the panic, all right? Not only do the Titans have a ton of cap space, they still have other options on the market, and there are plenty of other ways that they can add players between now and the start of the season. We're going to talk about how much cap space the Tennessee Titans actually currently have right now. Before we get into it, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker dealer. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We just talked about why the Titans fans need to calm down with the free agent panic. It's the start of week 2 of free agency, and what matters most to the Titans is not spending all of their money right now. But the Titans still do have a lot of cap space available, and there are still good options on the free agent market. So I'm going to go over those options for the Titans. Before I do want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Make sure to go check out my Calvin Ridley film breakdown. Again, the link to that is going to be down in the description below. Put a lot of work into it. He cooked the Titans and showed why he is going to be an excellent player in 2024. Tic Tac Titans on YouTube. Make sure you guys check out that Calvin Ridley film breakdown. But right now, the Titans have about $55 million in cap space still remaining. How is that possible? I'll tell you. Calvin Ridley's cap hit, $10 million. Cheeto's cap hit, $7 million. Cushenberry's cap hit, $6.4 million. Tony Pollard's cap hit, $4 million. So between all of those players, I mean, you're looking at basically $27 million in cap space. You start with about the 80, 82 that they had, and they're at about $55 million in cap space, give or take a million or two. Might be see it at 53, 52, 55, right in there. That is without the cap hits of Nick Folk, Sadiq Charles, Kenneth Murray, NWI, Jack Gibbons. We don't know the cap hits of those players yet, but I would imagine that it's anywhere from $10 to $12 million with those 5 players. Think Folk is probably around $3 million. Leno and NWI are probably around, Sadiq Charles and NWI are probably around $2 million. Gibbons probably $1.5 million. Kenneth Murray probably $5 to $6 million cap hit. So it's probably about $10 to $12 million in those players. So the Titans probably realistically have functionally $43, $42 to $45 million in cap space to play with. But I also want to say that the Titans rookie class, as it stands right now, would cost them $11 million. So realistically, the Titans have about 30, 32, 33 million dollars in cap space that they can actually spend. When you think about it that way, it's obvious why the Titans aren't going out and giving big deals to Jerome Baker or Justin Simmons or Eric Armstead. They have about $30 million of cap space, and the Titans, I think, would like to keep some cap space open during the season. The Titans kept $10 million of cap space last year. If they go into the season or go into the summer with $30 million in space, they can add a veteran if they become available, like a DeAndre Hopkins. They can trade a veteran who maybe his team drafts some people. We could talk about those options at the end of the show, but the reality here is the Titans have about $30 to $35 million in effective cap space if you count the rookies and the guys who haven't hit the salary cap yet who they signed. So it's not like the Titans have, $50 million to go play with. It's about $30 million. So they can make a couple bargain signings here and there as we get more into the second and third wave of free agency. But again, the Titans need an offensive tackle. They need a veteran offensive tackle. But outside of that, there is no one on the free agent market that I want to pay big money for or compromise money in the future for. Think on the defensive line, nose tackle. Maybe T.R. Tart. I think he's going back to the Bengals, but maybe you bring Tart back, different coaching staff. Maybe it's totally different vibes. I doubt it, but hey, Jonathan Hankins is an option. Big-bodied nose tackle. He's 31 years old, but give him a 1-year, $2 million deal. Let's ride with that. A guy like Sebastian Joseph Day, I think makes sense as a run-stuffing nose tackle for the Titans. Again, a veteran guy, bring him in, 1-year deal minimum, and then you move on after the year and you look for something else. You can't fix everything this offseason. So maybe you add a DT in the draft. Maybe you add an undrafted free agent like T.R. Tart was, like Naquan Jones was. Maybe you add an undrafted free agent who becomes your starter. Like, I'm just not worried about it. You go to, like defensive linemen, like defensive ends. Emmanuel Ogbah, Mike Dana could make some sense. Again, 1 year, veteran minimum. The Titans are still pursuing Chase Young on the edge. Maybe a Jadeveon Clowney reunion. Denard Wilson and him had success together last year in Baltimore. Like, there are options out there still for the Titans at these key positions. You bring in Chase Young, like I just said. That would be a big home run for the Titans. They could be holding out to do that. Linebacker, Quan Alexander, Kamu Grugier-Hill is a guy who I really like as an option. Leighton Vander Esch just got released, although the injury concerns there. I don't know if I do that, but on a one-year deal, Shaquille Leonard, maybe? Take it? No, I'm just kidding on that one. But Isaiah Simmons is still out there. I've continued to say I think Isaiah Simmons, 6'4", freak athlete. Let the Titans bring him in, see if they can get the best out of him with Frank Bush as the linebacker coach. Maybe even you use Isaiah Simmons, who's 6'4", 220, 230, great speed. Maybe you use him like a Kyle Hamilton as a early down slot, dime linebacker, matchup on tight ends. Like, there are a lot of options out there on the market still. At cornerback, there are a ton of options. Xavier Howard's still out there. Adoree Jackson, Rock Ya-Sin, CJ Henderson is a young upside guy. Shaquille Griffin, Akello Witherspoon. Like, there are still options. And let me say this. Maybe a trade. We'll talk about that here in just a second. At safety, Justin Simmons still on the market. Maybe his price will come down now that there aren't as many suitors. Marcus May is a guy the Titans have been rumored to be interested in, a physical, do-it-all, versatile safety who's a little older, of course, had some injuries. But again, the Titans aren't going to be able to solve these issues long-term in one offseason. Jamal Adams as a blitzing safety as a pass rushing box linebacker, not a defensive back, of course. Kayvon Wallace, I would love for the Titans to bring back Kayvon Wallace. You bring back Kayvon Wallace, you pair him with Amani Hooker, you bring in Marcus May, who can be your third physical safety, and I like what the Titans have there for a one-year situation. Again, the theme of the episode is the panic needs to chill. You should have had proper expectations all along that the Titans can't fix everything. So you go out and you get an offensive tackle with your last big free agency signing, and then you give a bunch of one-year deals to these average replaceable players, and then you attack defense next year. It's just so obvious. And as I've said all episode, it's not like after the first 2 weeks of free agency, the Titans can't add players anymore. Learn a lesson like I have from what happened with DeAndre Hopkins last year. The Tennessee Titans have multiple ways to add players throughout the remaining months before the season starts. And even if they don't, use your rollover minutes, baby. I'll explain what I'm talking about. Before I do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets. They have the best features available in the ticket buying marketplace. Number one, you get killer last minute deals. They have like flash deals and zone deals, and they have their Game Time guarantee, where if you find a seat and you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Not only that, but you get all-in prices. Like, it's not like other places. When they say how much a ticket costs, when you go to pay for that ticket, that's how much it's going to cost. You also get an actual view from your seat, so you can literally see what it's going to look like when you sit down from the Game Time app. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I've purchased multiple tickets for not only sporting events, but concerts, comedy shows. They have theater events as well. Make sure that you download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. I am once again, for the second time in 2 weeks, begging Tennessee Titans fans to calm down. We went over the reasons why everyone needs to calm down, who are available at offensive tackle, the positions of need on defense, how much cap space the Titans have. But now I want to talk about what the Titans can do to add players going forward that has nothing to do with this first, couple of weeks of free agency. Before I get into it, thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Also want to tell you guys that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's all YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On, plus coverage of every league from our national shows. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And again, go check out my Calvin Ridley film breakdown. The link for it is going to be down below in the description of this podcast. But I've been preaching patience, telling people to relax. So, of course, we want to see the Titans go out and add a bunch of people in free agency. I remember the Titans added a bunch of people on day one, and then they didn't add anybody on day two, and everybody panicked. That was the first free agency panic that we saw. And then literally the next day, the Titans go out and sign Calvin Ridley. So that just tells you, relax, calm down. So I'm giving you this message as we get into the second week of free agency, because I know people are starting to freak out again. And here's the thing. Even if the Titans don't sign some of these positions in the free agency period, now until like the draft, like the, first couple of weeks of free agency here. After teams draft players, guys get cut. They say, oh, we drafted 2 cornerbacks that we really like. We're going to cut this veteran cornerback and save some money on the salary cap. Oh, we drafted a linebacker that we really like. We have too many. We're going to cut this veteran that we don't need anymore and play the younger guy over him. There are players who get cut after the draft because teams added their position and want to save money, and the Titans can take advantage of those. So keeping your powder dry, not spending every dollar that you have in the first 2 weeks of free agency and letting things play out a little bit throughout the summer can obviously be beneficial. Not only that, it's not just the cuts that happen from the draft. Think about training camp. Think about after those 3 weeks of training camp, 4 weeks of training camp, where veterans get cut because the younger player underneath them outperforms them. Sometimes it's not even that the veteran player is bad. It's just that the team has younger players that they want to play over that veteran. So the veteran gets cut. So it's not just draft cuts that happen. It's camp cuts that happen. We get later into the summer. Some players are disgruntled. They want to trade. They want to release. Look what happened with DeAndre Hopkins last year. Again, I learned my lesson. I barked and ranted and raved about wide receiver for months and months and months and months. And then all of a sudden, the Titans signed the best free agent wide receiver from last year's cycle. Not saying that DeAndre Hopkins, a player of that level, is going to be available. The DeAndre Hopkins situation is an outlier. It's not something that you should count on as an option for you, but it still will remain an option. So the Titans don't have to fill all these spots. I know that everybody wants a starting lineup right away, but the Titans don't have to have a complete starting lineup through 2 weeks of free agency. Go through the draft, go through draft cuts, go through camp cuts. Veteran summer free agency is a real thing, okay? So be able to have some money to do some work there. I said it earlier in the show, and I repeat it again. I want the Titans to go out and draft 2 wide receivers and 2 offensive tackles. Attack those positions. This is the best offensive tackle and wide receiver draft classes that we have seen in forever. So double down at those positions that are also big positions of need. All right, you do that. And then you can add some defensive pieces with your other picks in the draft. You can add some veteran free agents. And then you go into next year, you have your offense solved with young wide receivers, talented offensive tackles, your quarterback of the future, 2 good running backs. You got 2 tight ends. You have your offense solved, ready to go under Brian Callahan. And next year, you completely attack the defense. So the Titans could also make some trades. The Titans don't just have to sign guys in free agency. Once we get past this NFL draft and the 2025 draft picks are on the table and picks that, actually have value to these teams, then the Titans can make some trades in the summer with their additional cap space. They can absorb an expensive veteran contract, give away some 2025 draft capital, and get back more players. That's still an option for the Titans as well. So there are a ton of avenues for the Titans to add players and improve this team that don't have to come in the second or first week of free agency. All right? Have some patience. This is a long game here. We all should have learned our lesson a little bit last year. One other thing that I want to mention here, along with the trades, along with the other avenues, is rollover cap. So if you didn't know this, you can roll over cap space in the NFL like rollover minutes with our old cell phone plans. The Titans rolled over $9 million in cap space from 2023 to 2024. Back when J-Rob first took over, he rolled over $40 million in cap space his first year and $30 million his second year. So rollover cap space is huge. And if the Titans were to roll over another 10, 20 million of cap space, now they have even more money to attack the defense next year when there are actual players available worth spending the money on. Now, instead of signing 5 crap veterans this year, save that money and use it to actually sign problem solvers and long-term solutions next year. Or trade for players who are long-term solutions with big contracts next year. Like next year, the Titans could make a trade for L'Jarius Sneed. Not actually L'Jarius Sneed, but next year's L'Jarius Sneed. Next year's T. Higgins. The Titans have the ability to do that with some rollover cap space. So there are just so many avenues for this team to get better, whether it be this year, whether it be next year. And again, it's all about our expectations of the team. And I am not expecting a Super Bowl run from this team. I'm just expecting improvements and to be competitive. And again, they don't have to use their entire cap space in the first 2 weeks of free agency because all of you are impatient and want a starting lineup set. Your expectations are in the wrong place. Your patience are in the wrong place. So just think about these other avenues the Titans could go through to add players, whether it be this year, whether it be next year, and why it's prudent to not blow all of your money right now. I also want to mention, like I said, L'Jarius Sneed, there was some reporting from Matt Verdamam, I think is his name, Verdamam, but saying that the Titans are still in on a L'Jarius Sneed trade, and it's not the compensation trade-wise that is holding up the deal. It's the L'Jarius Sneed contract because he wants $22 to $23 million, wants to be the highest paid cornerback in the NFL, and it doesn't look like the Colts or the Titans want to do that. Now, I think that the Titans are just being used as a bargaining chip here. I think the Titans are being used to drive the price up for L'Jarius Sneed, and I'm fine for that because the Titans are driving the price up on the Indianapolis Colts. And I think Sneed still ultimately goes to the Colts, but if the Titans can drive that price up $4 or $5 million per season, more guaranteed money by just being a bargaining chip and being friendly with L'Jarius Sneed's agent, hey, yeah, throw our name in the mix. Say that the Titans are in the mix, scare the Colts, and drive up that price. Yeah, even if the Titans aren't legitimately still in on L'Jarius Sneed, their just presence in the rumors drives up the price on the Colts, and I love that. But again, the Titans have the cap space right now that if they do want to make that trade, they can do it. And that's why not blowing all your money on Eric Armstead and Justin Simmons and Jerome Baker. If the Titans don't sign those guys, but then go out and trade for L'Jarius Sneed, what would you rather do? For me, it would be the trade for Sneed over Jerome Baker and Eric Armstead and Justin Simmons. So again, everyone relax. Everyone calm down. And another trade that you heard about, Treylon Burks to the Jets. We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show, though. I'm going to go over why trading Treylon Burks, if it's possible, would be a great idea for the Titans. So make sure that you tune into that. Check out the Calvin Ridley film breakdown, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.